deep in the dense, ghost-like jungles of Vietnam's Central Highlands. Their last radio transmission, we're surrounded. They're coming from the ridge. Then, silence. No distress flare, no coordinates, no bodies ever found. Decades later, villagers still whisper about strange American men seen wandering the jungle long after the war ended. Silent, disoriented, and armed with rusted rifles. Tonight, we uncover one of the most disturbing mysteries of the Vietnam War. What really happened to the Lost Platoon? If you think you already know everything about Vietnam's dark secrets, this story will make you question everything. Stay till the end. The Vietnam War, 1969. Operation Wayne Gray was in full swing. U.S. forces were pushing into the Central Highlands near Kon Tum province, a region thick with tangled jungle, steep ridges, and hidden tunnels that could swallow an entire platoon whole. The 1st Battalion, 8th Infantry Regiment had a clear objective: cut off North Vietnamese supply lines. But for Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon, things would never go according to plan. Military records list them as MIA under combat conditions, but some veterans insist that what happened wasn't just a loss, it was a cover-up. March 17, 1969, Camp Inari. The soldiers were restless. Rain fell like knives, slicing through the corrugated roofs. Sergeant William Red Davis, 25, stood hunched over a map, his cigarette burning down to the filter. Captain McAllister: "You'll move northeast, sector Delta 47. Intel says light resistance. Should be a 4-hour sweep." Davis: 4 hours? In this weather? We'll be lucky if we see our boots, sir. McAllister: "Orders are orders, Sergeant. You'll move at dawn." They were told they'd be back before nightfall. They never were. Officially, the platoon vanished sometime between March 17th and March 18th, 1969. Their last known position, a ridge near Duck Toe, a region notorious for ambushes and phantom enemy sightings. Records show no air support call, no artillery request. The Army's post-operation report classified it as a lost communication incident. But declassified documents decades later painted a darker picture. Internal memos warning of psychological distress among surviving units and unexplained anomalies in the field. Veterans from nearby units remember the chatter vividly. They said they heard screams on the radio, one soldier recalls, but not from combat, more like panic. Then everything cut out. The Central Highlands was unlike any battlefield in modern war. The jungles swallowed sound. Compass needles spun aimlessly. Fog hung so thick it blurred the line between earth and sky. Imagine being out there, 22 men cut off from command, surrounded by whispers in a foreign language, your map soaked to pulp. At first, the platoon moved as ordered. But when one of their scouts, Private Lang, spotted fresh boot prints that didn't match American issue, everything changed. Davis: "Those aren't NVA. Look at the treads. Too wide. Civilian, maybe." Then what are they doing this far in? That's what we're gonna find out. Minutes later, gunfire erupted. Short, scattered bursts, followed by silence. When radio contact resumed, all they heard was static, and then a single word: Ridge. That was their last message. 2 days later, a search team led by Lieutenant Harris was dispatched to locate the platoon. What they found defied logic. Their LZ landing zone was intact. The ground showed no signs of battle. No spent shells, no blood, no tracks leading away. Just the faint smell of smoke and the remains of a campfire that hadn't burned long. and something stranger. A perimeter of small wooden stakes driven into the ground, each carved with rough symbols.
Local Montagnard tribes claimed those were spirit markers, used to ward off the wandering souls of men who refused death. Years later, during a 1983 veterans reunion, a former radio man named John Hawk Pennington broke his silence. We picked up their signal that night, weak but clear. They weren't calling for help. They were arguing. I remember hearing Sergeant Davis say, "We can't go back. They'll court-martial us." Then nothing. What did he mean, "We can't go back"? The military dismissed his claim as faulty memory under trauma, but Pennington insisted the recording existed until the tape was reportedly destroyed in a warehouse fire in 1976. Three main theories emerged. Enemy ambush. The platoon was ambushed by the NVA and wiped out, their bodies later moved or destroyed. Defection or desertion. The men, overwhelmed by the horrors of war, fled into the jungle, living among local tribes to escape prosecution. Friendly fire cover-up. A mistaken airstrike or artillery barrage annihilated the platoon, and the Army buried the truth to protect command reputations. But there's a fourth theory, the one the Army refuses to acknowledge. Locals claim the jungle itself took them. They tell stories of foreign ghosts still wandering at night, wearing rotted uniforms and carrying weapons that no longer work. Could a platoon really vanish without a trace? Could 22 trained soldiers defy orders just to survive? As you'll soon see, the deeper investigators dug, the more the evidence pointed not toward enemy fire, but toward something far more disturbing within their own ranks. They had vanished without a trace, until a local guide stumbled across a set of buried notebooks on a ridge the Army never documented. The pages were waterlogged, filled with shaky handwriting, and a truth so dark it could rewrite the official history of the Vietnam War. Tonight, we go back into the Central Highlands to uncover the secrets the military tried to bury, and the desperate choices that might have kept the Lost Platoon alive, or doomed them forever. In 1975, after the war, a Montagnard hunter named Nguyen Van Yu was scouting near the infamous ridge when his dog started digging at a partially eroded trench. Inside, he found a rusted metal box containing 5 tattered notebooks. Each was labeled with the name of a member of the missing platoon. The paper was soaked, Nguyen said later in an interview with a French journalist, but I could make out words like orders and "we cannot return." When the notebooks reached U.S. authorities, they were mostly ignored, filed away under lost combat property. But some copies were leaked to investigative journalists decades later, revealing a chilling sequence of events that went far beyond a simple ambush. According to the recovered writings, tension escalated almost immediately after the platoon left the LZ. Private Lang wrote, "Sergeant Davis is arguing with the captain's orders over the radio. Something doesn't feel right. We are deep in enemy territory, and yet the maps don't match what we see. I trust Red more than anyone else here." Sergeant Davis's own entries reveal a moral and tactical dilemma. We cannot go back. The orders would send us to certain death. The men are afraid, but I cannot let fear rule us. We will survive by any means necessary. Here lies the first hint that the platoon may have deliberately defied orders, not out of cowardice, but out of survival instinct. The ridge itself was a natural labyrinth, a tangle of cliffs, hidden caves, and thick jungle canopies that blocked aerial reconnaissance. Soldiers' accounts from nearby units describe strange sounds at night. Footsteps on rocks where no one should have walked. Whispering voices that seemed almost human.
Private Alvarez, Recollection, 1981. It felt like the ridge was alive, like it was testing us. We heard men calling out in English, shouting, begging. But when we investigated, no one was there. Could the Lost Platoon have hidden themselves, blending into the jungle? Or had something more sinister occurred? The diaries chronicle the platoon taking radical steps to survive. They rationed food, dismantled their radios to avoid detection, and even burned uniforms to throw off trackers. If we are seen by our own, they will bring fire down upon us. We are no longer Charlie Company. We are ghosts. Sergeant Davis. This raises a haunting question. Were they deserters, or just men pushed to the edge of morality by war? Survivors' entries describe nightly debates. Some wanted to turn back and report. Others feared that obeying orders would be a death sentence. The tension is almost cinematic. A platoon slowly fracturing under the weight of fear, exhaustion, and the dense alien jungle. Weeks into the mission, the platoon encountered a small montagnard village hidden deep in the valleys of the ridge. We saw Americans, villagers were called. They looked lost but alive. They spoke little but carried themselves like men who had seen death too many times. The soldiers received temporary shelter, food, and guidance. But the diaries reveal a chilling detail. We cannot stay. The army will not forgive us. We will walk the ridge until it either kills us or forgets us. Davis. By now, the men were psychologically transformed. Their identities tied not to rank or orders, but to survival. The most mysterious entries describe members vanishing overnight. Private Lang wrote, "Hawkins is gone. We woke up and he was not in the tent. No tracks, no struggle, nothing. Just gone." Davis added, "We are losing men not to bullets, but to something else. The ridge takes what it wants." This is where stories from veterans and villagers converge. Multiple accounts mention strange sightings of lost Americans long after the official war ended. Men wandering alone, disoriented, never returning to any base. By late 1969, the Army officially labeled the platoon KIA/MIA, citing a hostile engagement with enemy forces. But some internal memos suggest a deeper concern. Soldiers who survived and attempted to report irregular activity were silenced or transferred. The notebooks that survived the ridge were classified lost or destroyed. Air reconnaissance footage never released shows blurry movements in areas declared empty. Investigators decades later concluded the platoon defied orders and disappeared into the jungle, but what happened next remains uncertain. The diaries reveal the emotional strain, men hallucinating under heat and hunger, arguments over morality, kill to survive or wait for rescue, fear of being court-martialed for defying orders. I dream of the men I lost. Every tree hides a ghost. Every step could be my last. If someone finds this, know we tried to survive, not to betray. Sergeant Davis. Even without confirmation of deaths, the psychological horror endured by these men was as lethal as bullets. Some claim that one or two men did make it out, decades later, living under assumed identities among local tribes. Others believe the jungle claimed them entirely. But a question lingers. If they survived by defying orders, could any of them ever return to civilization without facing justice or suspicion? Months after the platoon vanished, locals reported seeing Americans walking through the jungle. Men who were supposed to be dead. Some were armed, some were silent. All were changed. Tonight, we follow the trail of whispers, lost recordings, and eyewitness accounts that may finally explain why the Lost Platoon disappeared, and why the Army desperately wanted the truth buried forever. In late 1969, a Montagnard villager named Pa Lo reported seeing 3 men in tattered uniforms moving cautiously through the underbrush near Dak To. They did not speak, Pa Lo said in a later interview. They looked tired, afraid, but they did not look like men who were lost. They were hiding. Soldiers stationed nearby heard radio chatter, not standard military communication, but muffled voices in English speaking orders that didn't match the chain of command. One phrase repeated, "Do not return. They will not forgive us." The mysterious words match entries in the diaries discovered on the ridge months earlier. Declassified Army documents revealed that the unit's radios intermittently recorded static, but embedded within were faint human voices. Analysts later attempted to enhance the recordings. What they heard shocked them. Soldiers speaking in fragmented sentences about moving off-grid and avoiding air support. Mentions of a safe passage through the ridge and a village nobody maps. Instructions seemingly from the sergeant to the men. We survive first, orders second. Could the platoon have consciously abandoned their mission to survive? Imagine listening to these intercepted transmissions. Private Lang whispering, "Are we going to make it out alive?" Sergeant Davis, "We follow the ridge, don't answer the radios. The Army won't forgive this, but neither will the jungle if we turn back." Lang, "What about the men who stay behind?" Davis, "There are no men behind us. Only choices. Live or disappear." The men were no longer just soldiers. They had become shadows of themselves, moving through the jungle on instincts that defied orders. Local Montagnard tribes later reported helping some platoon members survive temporarily. They asked for food, not weapons, one elder recounted. They would not speak of their commanders. They said, "We cannot return. Not yet." Survivors' diaries support this, describing barter for food, hiding in caves, and walking dozens of kilometers at night to avoid U.S. patrols and enemy units alike. Yet some entries hint at internal strife. Fights over whether to obey orders or remain hidden. Arguments over morality. Kill to survive or risk capture. Fear that leaving the jungle would endanger not just themselves, but the few who helped them. By late March 1969, the platoon had adapted to a new reality. They were constantly on alert. Sleep was minimal, rationing extreme. Paranoia had set in. They feared airstrikes, friendly patrols, and even locals who might turn them in. Davis's diary reflects this transformation. "We are no longer a unit of the Army. We are only men who survive. If anyone finds this, know that every step was measured, every decision a balance between life and death." The stress was compounded by hallucinations. Some soldiers reported seeing phantom soldiers from other units, hearing cries that didn't exist, and being stalked by unseen presences. By April 1969, Army investigators had begun questioning officers about missing platoons in the Central Highlands. Internal memos show concern over psychological breakdowns and inconsistent testimonies among search teams. Yet official reports remain sanitized. The men were listed as MIA, presumed killed by enemy fire. Some documents hint at intervention to suppress survivors' accounts. Officers were instructed not to speak about encounters with living men. Any recovered diaries or tapes were either destroyed or misplaced. Search were canceled abruptly, leaving areas marked as cleared, but never truly investigated. This secrecy fuels the mystery. Was the disappearance simply the result of chaos, or something deliberately concealed? Multiple independent reports suggest at least 2 platoon members survived well into 1970, living among local tribes, sometimes spotted on patrols or near abandoned villages. Eyewitness accounts describe men appearing older and emaciated, with long hair and beards, carrying old M16s and scavenged equipment, avoiding human contact, speaking rarely, and disappearing before soldiers could reach them. One Montagnard villager recalled a chilling interaction. They looked at us, and for a long time did not speak. Then one said, "We cannot return. Not now. Not ever." Then they vanished into the mist. The diaries reveal the human side of this nightmare. Soldiers debating whether to kill to survive or risk starvation. Discussions of breaking radio silence, knowing it could result in court-martial. Fears of being abandoned or betrayed by their own command. Private Lang wrote, "I have lost the boy I was. Only shadows remain. We are alive, but at what cost? If anyone finds this, remember, we chose survival, even when it was forbidden." Some researchers now suggest that the Lost Platoon was neither fully captured nor fully killed. They may have survived for months in the jungle, living off the land and hiding from both sides of the war.
Months after the last confirmed sighting, search teams stumbled across footprints that didn't belong to any American or NVA soldier. They were worn, barefoot yet strangely precise, like men walking with purpose through the foggy Central Highlands. Tonight we follow these mysterious trails, examine recovered artifacts, and explore chilling forensic evidence that might finally answer the question: did the platoon survive or vanish into legend? In mid-1970, a recon patrol near the ridge discovered remnants of equipment and personal effects. A rusted canteen engraved with a soldier's name, a partially destroyed M16 with dried blood, torn pages of a diary listing coordinates that didn't exist on any official map. The most puzzling discovery? Footprints leading in a perfect circle around a clearing, as if the men had been walking in place for days. Investigators speculated, were these signs of psychological disorientation, a deliberate camouflage tactic, or something far stranger? Modern forensic analysis of the footprints revealed anomalies. Stride lengths inconsistent with normal human gait, suggesting extreme fatigue or cautious stalking behavior. Depth of impressions varying, indicating uneven weight distribution, possibly caused by carrying heavy gear or injuries. No evidence of animal interference, even though the jungle was teeming with wildlife. Experts later concluded that the patterns were too calculated to be random, but impossible to fully explain. Radio operators recovered partial recordings months later from a damaged transmitter. Static dominated, but faint voices were audible. References to moving north toward the hidden valley and avoiding the bird, likely code for helicopters or air reconnaissance. Reassurances: we will survive. Don't follow. Don't call. These recordings corroborate diary entries. The platoon deliberately avoided rescue, fearing that obeying orders would end in death rather than survival. Diaries from the ridge reveal a grim reality. Some members fell ill, others wounded. By April 1969, the platoon had fractured into smaller groups. Sergeant Davis's final entries describe a heart-wrenching choice. We cannot stay together. Too dangerous. The ridge demands solitude. Some may die, some may live, but none can return as soldiers, only as shadows. The remaining men disappeared into dense forest valleys, with no confirmed contact afterward. Montagnard villagers were called seeing men with American uniforms months after the official MIA declaration.
One man, long-bearded and skeletal, asked for food and disappeared before anyone could approach. Another carried a rusted rifle, moving silently along a jungle ridge, leaving footprints that did not match any known pattern. Villagers spoke of strange rituals performed by these men, possibly an adaptation to jungle survival or psychological stress. Some accounts suggest the platoon merged with local tribes, adopting their lifestyle to survive undetected. Search teams found unexplained carvings along tree trunks and rock faces, symbols resembling letters, but not matching any known alphabet. Telltale marks in the dirt indicating man-made traps or defensive positions. Evidence of planned survival strategies rather than chaotic hiding. Researchers theorized the platoon may have left markers to guide each other, or perhaps as warnings to anyone who followed. Despite mounting evidence, official records remained unchanged. Platoon listed as KIA, MIA. Search reports vaguely referenced no trace found. Any evidence of survivors, sightings, or diaries was dismissed as anecdotal or unreliable. One internal memo described a chilling statement: the unit's disappearance must remain classified. Public knowledge could compromise operational integrity and troop morale. Essentially, the Army chose secrecy over truth, leaving the fate of the Lost Platoon a mystery. Survivor diaries reveal a haunting perspective. Men constantly battling fear, hallucinations, and moral dilemmas. Choices between survival and duty creating lasting trauma. Acceptance that if they ever returned, they would be punished for defying orders. Private Lang's final entry. If anyone finds this, know that we lived, but not as soldiers. The jungle took our names, our ranks, and left only shadows, only memories. The psychological toll may have been as lethal as combat itself. The Lost Platoon vanished into legend, leaving behind footprints, diaries, artifacts, and whispers. But the most chilling question remains: did some survive long enough to return to society, unseen, unacknowledged, and unpunished? Decades after the war, rumors persisted. Some said the Lost Platoon never truly left the Central Highlands. Others claimed a handful of men quietly reappeared in distant villages, unrecognizable, haunted, and unwilling to speak. Tonight, we confront the final evidence, piecing together decades of whispers, diaries, and artifacts, and ask the question that has haunted historians and veterans alike. Did the Lost Platoon survive? Or did the jungle claim them forever? In the 1980s, American journalists and former soldiers traveling through Vietnam documented alleged sightings of men matching the descriptions of the platoon. Villagers reported seeing tall, gaunt men with long hair and tattered uniforms, silently tending to crops or fishing. Some men were said to carry American weapons, rusted but functional. Most avoided contact, vanishing into the forest whenever approached. One former Montagnard elder said, "They were not dead. They were shadows of men, walking between life and death. They spoke little, but their eyes carried the war we will never forget." These accounts align eerily with diary entries recovered from the ridge, confirming that at least some platoon members may have survived longer than officially acknowledged. In 1995, a batch of previously classified documents was released, revealing search missions continued months after the official MIA declaration, often canceled mysteriously. Aerial reconnaissance recorded unexplained heat signatures moving in areas deemed cleared. Reports of civilians encountering men in faded uniforms were officially dismissed as mistaken identity or hallucination. Yet these reports suggest a chilling possibility. The platoon, was actively avoiding capture, not by the enemy, but by their own military. Imagine the men talking decades later, if they ever did. Sergeant Davis, journal entry 1969. "We cannot return. We have seen too much. The jungle owns us now." Private Lang. "We are soldiers without orders, alive but not free." Hawkins. "If anyone finds this, tell them we chose life, even if it means we vanish from history." These words echo a central theme: survival in defiance of command, a choice that erased their names from official records. Long-term survival in the jungle reshaped the platoon's members. They learned to read the jungle like a map, identifying edible plants, water sources, and animal trails. Hunted by fear, not just from the NVA, but from possible friendly patrols. Adopted montagnard survival techniques, blending with local communities while avoiding notice. One diary entry describes a chilling internal debate. Do we risk being seen by our own? If they capture us, we die for defiance. If we stay hidden, we might live, but we will never see home again. The jungle had forced them into a moral crucible. Obedience versus survival, duty versus life. Investigation decades later found rusted rifle parts and uniform remnants in remote valleys with no signs of combat. Footprints that ended abruptly in cliffs or dense foggy areas, as if men vanished into the landscape. Traces of shelters camouflaged with jungle foliage, sometimes centuries apart from known war maps. These signs suggest that some platoon members may have survived for months or years beyond official records. Historians and researchers have proposed several theories for the platoon's fate. Complete jungle assimilation. The men joined montagnard tribes, never returning to society. Secret extraction. Certain survivors may have been secretly rescued and quietly relocated, records erased. Psychological breakdown. Extreme jungle survival caused men to abandon their identities, effectively disappearing from memory and military accounting. Fatal outcome. Some or all may have eventually succumbed to disease, hunger, or environmental hazards. But the lack of bodies fueled legend. Each theory is plausible, but no definitive proof exists, leaving the mystery unsolved. The diaries and eyewitness accounts reveal more than survival. They reveal the human cost of war. Men torn between obedience and instinct. Families who never received closure. The haunting feeling that, even decades later, the jungle still holds their shadows. Private Lang. We walk between worlds now, alive but forgotten. The jungle remembers what the army chooses to forget. This final reflection gives the Lost Platoon its enduring mystique. Soldiers who survived, but in doing so, erased themselves from history. The Lost Platoon remains a cautionary tale. Survival can demand unimaginable choices. Orders and duty may conflict with instinct. History is often written by those who survive, or by those in power who decide what gets remembered. Researchers continue to investigate the ridge and surrounding valleys, looking for artifacts, diary fragments, and footprints that may finally shed light on this enduring mystery. The Lost Platoon may never return to the pages of official history, but their story lives on, in diaries, in whispers, and in the shadows of the Central Highlands. If you've been captivated by this story, don't forget to subscribe. There are countless untold mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and the jungle still has secrets to reveal. The Lost Platoon didn't just vanish. They defied orders, defied death, and became legends. And perhaps, somewhere in the mist of the Central Highlands, their shadows still walk.